When you picture an ancient warrior, who comes to mind? Leonidas? Alexander the Great? Their stories are legendary, but what if I told you that's not even half the story? What if some of the most brilliant, ruthless, and feared military leaders in history were women? Leaders so powerful their enemies and later historians tried to write them out of existence. Today we're uncovering the real stories of the forgotten female commanders who shaped our world. Our journey begins in Egypt, around 1560 BCE. Forget the mighty, unified Egypt that built the pyramids. This was a fractured and humbled land. For over a century, the heartland of the pharaohs had been torn in two. Foreign invaders from the east, a people known as the Hyksos, had swept in with superior military technology, conquering the entire northern half of the kingdom. They ruled from their capital in the Nile Delta, while the true Theban pharaohs were pushed south, forced to pay tribute. For the proud people of Egypt, this was a period of profound national shame. A world turned upside down where the divine order had been shattered. Into this deeply divided and chaotic world, a princess named Ahhotep I was born. As queen consort, she watched as her husband, King Seqenenre-Ptah II, finally ignited the spark of a great rebellion to reclaim their homeland. But the cost was catastrophic. The king was brutally killed in battle, his body so grievously wounded that his mummy remains a testament to the ferocity of his final moments. With his death, the rebellion was on the verge of utter collapse. Hope flickered when their son, Kamose, took the throne and continued the fight, only for him to also die in battle shortly after. The royal house was decimated. Egypt was now left with a 10-year-old boy, Ahmoses I, as its king. The kingdom was utterly demoralized, heartbroken, and effectively leaderless. This was the moment the Hyksos should have swept south and crushed the Theban resistance for good, extinguishing the last light of a free Egypt. And this was the precise moment Ahhotep stepped up, refusing to let her family's dream die. Acting as regent for her young son, she cast aside the traditional passive roles of a queen and became the de facto commander-in-chief of Egypt's armies. This wasn't a secret or an assumption. It was carved in stone for all to see. An inscription at the Karnak temple complex, a victory stela for her son Ahmose, explicitly praises her actions. It says she was the one who looked after Egypt's troops, an astonishing statement. More than that, it credits her with bringing back its fugitives and gathering up its deserters. This is not the language of a grieving widow. This is the language of a supreme general, personally rebuilding a shattered army's morale and discipline. While the Hyksos threatened from the north, she was simultaneously crushing rebellions from rival factions within her own territory, securing the home front to ensure the war effort could even continue. She wasn't just holding the kingdom together, she was forging it into a weapon. Centuries later, when her original tomb was discovered in 1859, the contents left archaeologists stunned. Alongside the royal regalia were ceremonial daggers with golden hilts and magnificent bronze axes, items typically associated with a king's military might. But the most revealing treasure was a simple necklace bearing 3 large golden fly pendants. This wasn't just jewelry. This was the Order of the Golden Fly, the absolute highest military honor awarded by the pharaoh for extreme valor and persistence in combat. A single fly was a mark of incredible bravery. Ahhotep was buried with 3. She was the one who held the line when all seemed lost. She marshaled the forces, quelled internal dissent, and kept the dream of a liberated Egypt alive long enough for her son to grow. Her son, Ahmose I, is the one history remembers for finally expelling the Hyksos and launching the glorious new kingdom, Egypt's greatest imperial age. But he didn't do it alone. He inherited a stable kingdom, a loyal populace, and a battle-ready army, all meticulously prepared for him by his mother, the warrior queen Ahhotep. For more than 3,000 years, the story of one of the most powerful military commanders of the ancient world was simply gone. Wiped from the history books, her name and incredible deeds were lost to the sands of time. If not for a single, miraculous archaeological find in 1976, she would have remained a ghost, a whisper in a forgotten dynasty. Her name is Fu Hao, We travel back to 13th century BCE China during the powerful and enigmatic Shang dynasty. The ruler of the day, King Wu Ding, was a formidable figure who presided over a vast kingdom and, according to records, had over 60 wives. In a court filled with consorts, Fu Hao was utterly unique. She wasn't just a wife, she was a major political and military power in her own right. She held her own lands, presided over important religious ceremonies as a high priestess, and most astoundingly, served as one of the king's most trusted generals. We know this not from later histories, but from primary contemporary sources. Hundreds of oracle bones, tortoise shells and ox bones that the king would heat until they cracked, using the patterns to divine the future. On these artifacts, he repeatedly asks his ancestors for guidance concerning Fu Hao. He asks about her health, her pregnancies, and most frequently about her military campaigns, inquiring whether she should lead a certain attack or muster his armies for war. The scale of her command was breathtaking. One inscription reveals she led a force of 13,000 soldiers, a colossal number for that era, and reportedly the single largest army mobilized during the Shang dynasty. What's more, seasoned male generals, including some of the king's most senior commanders, served directly under her authority on major campaigns. This wasn't a ceremonial role. She was a brilliant frontline tactician. Inscriptions detail a campaign where she and the king executed a perfectly coordinated pincer movement against an enemy force. The king's army would drive the enemy forward, directly into a massive ambush that Fu Hao had strategically prepared. It is one of the earliest large-scale ambushes recorded in Chinese history, and it demonstrates her status not just as a leader, but as a strategic mastermind. Then in 1976, a team of archaeologists stumbled upon her tomb near the Shang capital of Yinshu. Miraculously, it was the only major Shang royal tomb that had never been looted. The treasures inside were staggering, a hoard of jade, bronze, and ivory that spoke of her immense status and the king's deep affection. But more important than the wealth were the weapons. The tomb contained over 130 of them, including swords, spears, and, most significantly, several massive bronze battle axes, not ceremonial trinkets, but real instruments of war, symbols of ultimate military authority in the Shang state. To find these objects, the very emblems of a general's power in a woman's tomb was completely unheard of. It shattered every preconceived notion about the role of women in ancient China. Fu Hao was likely deliberately erased by later more patriarchal dynasties like the Zhou and the Han, whose Confucian ideals couldn't possibly accommodate the reality of a powerful female general. Her discovery forced a total and radical rethink of women's power in the ancient world. Our journey now takes us to the 6th century BCE, across the vast windswept steppes of Central Asia. This was the domain of the Massagetæ, a fierce nomadic confederation of horse-riding warriors who valued freedom above all else. And at their head was a warrior queen who would become the stuff of terrifying legend, Tomyris. Her story is a brutal and personal clash with one of the most famous and successful empire builders in all of history, Cyrus the Great, founder of the Achaemenid Persian Empire. Having conquered kingdoms from the Mediterranean to the Indus Valley, Cyrus turned his gaze to the lands of the Massagetæ, seeing yet another territory to add to his vast domain. His first move was not with an army, but with a political calculation. He proposed marriage to Queen Tomyris, a thinly veiled attempt at a bloodless takeover. Tomyris, a shrewd leader, immediately saw the proposal for what it was, a power grab meant to subordinate her and her people. She flatly rejected his offer, sending a clear message that her kingdom was not for sale or for the taking. Undeterred and insulted, Cyrus invaded. His first strategy, however, was not one of honorable battle, but of cruel deception. Knowing the nomads were unfamiliar with wine and its effects, he set a trap. He had a section of his camp abandoned, but left it fully stocked with lavish food and, most importantly, huge quantities of strong, uncut wine. As he predicted, a Massagetæ detachment led by Tomyris' own son and general Spargapises discovered the seemingly deserted camp. They celebrated their easy victory by feasting and drinking themselves into a helpless, drunken stupor. Cyrus's forces then returned, slaughtering many and taking Sparga Pisces captive. Upon sobering up in captivity, Tomyris' son was so overcome with shame at his folly that he took his own life. The news shattered Tomyris, filling her with the incandescent rage of a betrayed queen and a grieving mother. She sent a blistering message to Cyrus, scorning his cowardly trick and vowing, in the words of the historian Herodotus, that she would give him his fill of blood. True to her nomadic warrior roots, she challenged him to a second, true battle, man to man, army to army. Cyrus, arrogant in his long history of victories, accepted. Tomyris took personal command of her army. The ferocious engagement that followed was, according to the ancient sources, one of the most savage battles of its time. The steppe horsemen of the Massagetæ, fighting on their home turf, eventually overwhelmed the mighty Persian army. Cyrus the Great, the unconquered conqueror of nations, was killed in the fray. Tomyris, true to her horrifying word, commanded her soldiers to find his body. She had his head severed, placed it into a wineskin filled with human blood and declared, "I warned you that I would quench your thirst for blood, and so I shall." Her brutal act cemented her legacy as the queen who would not be conquered. We've all heard the thrilling Greek legends of the Amazons, a mythical monolithic tribe of man-hating warrior women who supposedly lived at the edges of the known world. They were said to cut off one breast to better draw a bow, and they existed as a fascinating but ultimately unbelievable fantasy. For centuries, these stories were dismissed by historians as just that, a Greek fantasy, a way to explore ideas about gender and barbarism, but with no basis in reality. But what if the myths weren't a complete fabrication? What if they were just a distorted, funhouse mirror reflection of something astonishingly real? Across the vast Eurasian steppes, from the Black Sea to the borders of China, archaeological discoveries have unearthed a truth far more incredible than the myth. The Amazons, as a single tribe of women, weren't real. But warrior women, they absolutely were. These women belonged to the Scythians, a collection of nomadic cultures renowned for being masters of horse riding and archery, who dominated the steppes for centuries, starting around the 9th century BCE. Their society was recorded by the Greeks as being both barbaric and formidable. For decades, archaeologists excavating their burial mounds, known as kurgans, would find skeletons buried with a full complement of weapons: bows, arrows, swords, and spears. They naturally assumed these were the graves of male warriors. But with the advent of modern DNA analysis, scientists decided to test these long-held assumptions. The results sent shockwaves through the historical community. They were stunned to discover that up to 1/3, and in some excavated cemeteries even more, of all armed Scythian skeletons were genetically female. These were not a few isolated cases or ceremonial burials. These were frontline combatants, women who lived and died by the sword. Their bones told the story of a violent life, bearing the same battle injuries as their male counterparts: skulls crushed by clubs, arrowheads lodged in their spines, and sword cuts etched into their skeletons. This was not a myth. This was a widespread social reality. Further discoveries show that Scythian girls often began training for combat at a very young age, learning to ride and shoot alongside boys. They were buried with the tools of their trade, just like the men. In the heat of battle, dressed in the typical Scythian outfit of trousers and tunics, riding on horseback and firing arrows from a distance, it would have been nearly impossible for an outsider to distinguish their gender. This is almost certainly the origin of the Amazon myths. Greek traders and soldiers, encountering these fierce, skilled, and trouser-wearing female archers on the battlefield, would have returned home with wild tales. By the time these stories of warrior women from the steppes were retold back in Greece, they were twisted and exaggerated into the legend of a tribe composed solely of women. It turns out the historian Herodotus, often called the father of lies, was far closer to the truth when he wrote of a neighboring tribe to the Scythians, the Sauromations, whose women were said to be forbidden from marrying until they had killed a man in battle. The Scythian warriors weren't a myth, they were the real deal. Stories like these, the ones of Ahhotep, Fuhao, and the Scythian warriors, the histories that have been buried, ignored, or deliberately erased, are exactly why we make these videos. The past is so much richer and more complex than a simple list of kings and male generals. History is everyone's story, But for centuries, we've only been told one version of it. We believe that these forgotten stories don't just deserve to be told, they demand to be heard because they change our entire understanding of the past and what was possible. If you agree, if you feel that rush of discovery when a hidden truth is brought into the light, then please consider hitting that subscribe button and ringing the notification bell. It's a small click for you, but it genuinely helps us continue the mission of this channel to keep digging up the past, challenging old narratives, and bringing these incredible forgotten figures back to life for a new generation. We can't do it without your support. Now, let's get back to the battlefield. In the early 5th century BCE, the known world held its breath as the mighty Persian Empire, under the absolute rule of King Xerxes, launched a massive invasion of Greece. The goal was total conquest. Xerxes assembled one of the largest armies and navies ever seen. And fighting as a loyal ally and one of his most trusted commanders was a figure no one would have expected, a woman named Artemisia. Artemisia was the queen of Halicarnassus, a Greek city-state in modern-day Turkey that had fallen under Persian rule. But she was no mere client ruler. She was a brilliant naval strategist and a hardened commander who personally led her own squadron of 5 warships in the colossal Persian navy. The Greek historian Herodotus, who was himself from her home city of Halicarnassus, and thus uniquely positioned to know her story, writes about her with a clear sense of awe. He notes that she was the only female commander in the entire fleet, and more importantly, that her ships had the second-best reputation for fighting prowess among the hundreds of Allied vessels. She was respected not for her novelty, but for her competence and ferocity. This respect extended all the way to the top. Before the decisive and catastrophic Battle of Salamis, Xerxes held a great council of war with all of his senior commanders and allied kings. One by one, they all advised him to launch a direct naval assault, confident that their superior numbers would crush the smaller Greek fleet. All of them advised this except one. Artemisia was the sole voice of dissent. She stood before the great king and all his generals and argued forcefully against the plan. She correctly and brilliantly warned Xerxes that the Greeks were far superior sailors, and that fighting in the narrow straits of Salamis would neutralize the Persian numerical advantage, turning his larger, less maneuverable ships into easy targets. It was a moment of incredible political and personal courage. Xerxes listened, praised her intelligence and candor, but ultimately ignored her advice, siding with the male majority. The battle unfolded exactly as Artemisia had predicted. It was an unmitigated disaster for the Persians. The narrow straits turned into a death trap, and the massive Persian fleet was thrown into chaos. In the middle of this rout, with a vengeful Athenian warship bearing down on her, Artemisia found her escape path blocked by a mass of panicked and clumsy Persian ships. In a breathtaking stroke of ruthless and pragmatic genius, she made a split-second decision. She ordered her ship to turn and ram a friendly vessel, a ship belonging to another Persian ally, sinking it instantly. The Athenian captain, seeing this, logically assumed her ship must be a Greek ally or a recent defector, and immediately broke off his pursuit to hunt other targets. Artemisia escaped certain destruction through sheer cunning. Even more astoundingly, Xerxes, watching the battle from a golden throne on the shore, saw the incident but misunderstood. He was told Artemisia had sunk an enemy ship and famously declared in admiration, "My men have become women and my women men." She not only survived the disaster she had foreseen, but emerged from it with her reputation enhanced, having earned the king's highest praise for her cold-blooded ingenuity. Let's leap forward in time to the 1st century CE, to a land we now call Vietnam. For generations, this region had been under the thumb of Han Dynasty China, one of the most powerful empires on earth. The Chinese governors ruled with an iron fist, imposing crushing taxes, demanding tribute, and aggressively pushing a policy of forced assimilation. They sought to erase the local Vietnamese culture, a culture where, among other things, women traditionally enjoyed far more freedom and respect than in the rigid patriarchal society of Han China. This cultural and economic pressure created a powder keg of resentment just waiting for a spark. That spark came in the form of 2 sisters, Trung Trak and Trung Ni. They were daughters of a local lord, and unlike most women of their time, they were highly educated and had been trained since childhood in martial arts and the strategies of warfare. The final breaking point came when the notoriously brutal Chinese governor, Su Ding, decided to make an example of Trung Trac's husband, a local nobleman who had dared to protest Chinese policies. He had him publicly executed. In traditional Han Chinese society, a widow was expected to retreat into a life of quiet submission and mourning. Trung Trac did the absolute opposite. Consumed by a potent mixture of personal grief and righteous national fury, she and her sister Trung Ni decided that submission was no longer an option. They took their grief and forged it into a sword. They began to raise an army. In the year 40 CE, the sisters officially launched their rebellion. The response was overwhelming. Vietnamese lords and commoners, fed up with oppression, flocked to their banner. Their army swelled to a reported 80,000 soldiers, and remarkably, their leadership team included dozens of other powerful women. Chronicles list as many as 36 female generals serving under the sisters, one of whom was supposedly their own mother. Led by Trung Trac and Trung Ni, often depicted in later art as riding heroically atop war elephants, this massive force swept through the country. They were unstoppable. Within a single year, they had captured an astonishing 65 citadels from the Han, completely liberating their homeland. The Chinese administration crumbled, and its governor fled. Trung Trac was declared queen of a newly independent Vietnamese state. But you do not embarrass a superpower like the Han Empire and simply get away with it. The Han Emperor, infuriated by the humiliation, dispatched one of his best generals, Ma Yuan, at the head of a massive professional army with orders to crush the rebellion at all costs. The sisters and their army fought valiantly, holding out for 2 long years against the superior resources and discipline of the Han legions. It was a heroic but ultimately uneven fight. In 43 CE, their forces finally broken and facing certain capture, the 2 sisters chose their own end. They committed suicide, traditionally by drowning themselves in a river, rather than suffer the humiliation of being taken prisoner. Their revolution was short-lived, but their legacy is immortal. In Vietnam today, Trung Trac and Trung Ni are revered as the nation's most cherished national heroes, the Tiger Queens of Vietnam, eternal symbols of defiance who, for a brief, glorious time, humbled a mighty empire. Our next stop is the foggy, rebellious frontier of the Roman Empire, the province of Britannia, in the year 60 CE. Here, the Iceni tribe was led by King Prasutagus, who ruled as a client king of Rome. This was a precarious arrangement where he maintained nominal independence but was ultimately beholden to Roman authority. Hoping to safeguard his people after his death, he wrote a will that was a desperate political gamble. He left his kingdom jointly to the Roman Emperor Nero and his own 2 daughters. He believed this would appease Rome and guarantee his family's security. He was catastrophically wrong. The Romans saw the will not as a partnership, but as a full confession of submission, an invitation for total annexation. What happened next was not just a political takeover. It was an act of staggering brutality designed to terrorize and humiliate. Roman officials descended on the Iceni lands, seizing royal property and treating the entire kingdom as conquered territory. When the king's widow, Queen Boudica, dared to protest this violation of her husband's will, the response was swift and sadistic. She was publicly stripped and flogged like a common slave, and her 2 young daughters were raped by Roman soldiers. It was a calculated act of ultimate degradation, meant to break her spirit and shatter the Iceni's royal line, proving that even their queen was powerless before Rome. It did the exact opposite. This outrage unleashed a firestorm of pure, unadulterated rage. An unbreakable spirit had been ignited. Boudica, described by Roman historians as a terrifying figure, tall, with a harsh voice and a mass of reddish-gold hair falling to her waist, rallied not only her own people, but neighboring tribes who had also suffered under Roman rule. Her personal violation became a symbol for the entire island's subjugation. With the Roman governor and his legions away campaigning in Wales, Boudica's massive tribal army fell upon the undefended Roman capital of Camulodunum, modern-day Colchester. They burned it to the ground, slaughtering its inhabitants. They then marched on Londinium, London, and Verulamium, St. Albans, the commercial and administrative hubs of the province, and did the same. Roman historians like Tacitus and Cassius Dio claim that between 70,000 and 80,000 Roman citizens and sympathizers were killed. The province of Britain was on the verge of being completely lost to Rome. The Roman governor Suetonius Paulinus raced back from his campaign, gathering a force of just 10,000 legionaries for a desperate last stand. Before the final battle, Boudica rode in her chariot, her violated daughters beside her, and gave a powerful speech, declaring she was not fighting for lost wealth but for her lost freedom, for her bruised body, and for her daughter's outraged chastity. Her tribal host was massive, perhaps outnumbering the Romans 10-1, but it was no match for the superior discipline, armor, and tactics of the Roman legions. The battle turned into a horrific slaughter. Facing the inevitable defeat and capture, Boudica took poison, choosing death over submission. She came terrifyingly close to driving the world's greatest empire out of Britain, and remains an enduring, fiery symbol of furious resistance against tyranny. Our final stop is in the 3rd century CE, during a period of existential turmoil for the Roman Empire, known as the Crisis of the 3rd century. The empire was in absolute chaos, teetering on the brink of collapse, torn apart by constant civil wars, assassinations, and barbarian invasions. But in chaos lies opportunity. Far in the east, in the fantastically wealthy caravan city of Palmyra in the Syrian desert, a new power was rising, ready to take advantage of Rome's weakness. Its leader was the brilliant and ambitious Queen Zenobia. Originally the wife of the ruler of Palmyra, a Roman client, Zenobia became regent for their young son after her husband was assassinated, but she was never going to be a mere placeholder, quietly holding power for a male heir. Highly educated, fluent in multiple languages, and a skilled military strategist, Zenobia saw Rome's internal bleeding as her moment to strike and carve out her own destiny. In 270 CE, she launched a breathtakingly audacious military campaign. She first sent her top general to seize the most vital province in the entire Roman world, Egypt, the breadbasket of the empire. With its grain supply secured, she then took to the field herself, leading her armies to conquer Syria, Palestine, and much of Asia Minor. In just a few short years, she had accomplished the unthinkable. She had forged her own Palmyrene empire from the fractured eastern territories of Rome. Feeling invincible, she dropped all pretense of loyalty. She declared her son emperor and herself empress, minting coins with their images and officially seceding from the Roman Empire. She wasn't just a rebel, she was a rival empress, ruling a vast and wealthy domain that stretched from modern-day Turkey all the way to Egypt. But her spectacular rebellion could not last. A formidable and determined Roman general named Aurelian became emperor, and his sole focus was reuniting the broken empire. He marched east with his veteran legions, determined to bring the warrior queen of the East to heel. He defeated Zenobia's forces in 2 major battles and laid siege to her magnificent capital. Zenobia tried to flee on a camel to seek aid from the Persians, but was captured by Roman cavalry near the Euphrates River. Though her empire was destroyed, her audacity became legendary. Dragged back to Rome, she was paraded through the streets in Aurelian's triumph, supposedly bound in golden chains. She was a living symbol of the woman who dared to challenge the most powerful empire in the world, and who, for a brilliant moment in time, had actually won. Ahhotep, Fuhao, Tomyris, the Scythians, Artemisia, the Trung Sisters, Boudica and Zenobia. Separated by centuries and continents, they all shattered the expectations of their worlds. Their histories challenge us to look deeper and question the stories we've been told. For every king we celebrate, how many warrior queens have been forgotten? Who did we miss? Let me know in the comments which forgotten female warrior we should cover next. If you were inspired by these incredible women, please like this video and subscribe for more hidden histories. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.